Welcome back, SmythOS enthusiasts. In our previous video, we introduced the concept of async and await. Now, we're going to see these powerful features in action. Let's join Mike Sale as he demonstrates how to implement async and await in SmythOS.
One last thing on here. This is a very good way when you have, like I said, especially long-running branches of work that have to be done, but you still need those work items to complete. An important note here is the maximum number of seconds you can look at is 10,800, which is essentially 3 hours. So you can definitely wait as long as you need to wait. And I don't think that anything is going to run in Smith for 3 hours. So you can essentially remove the timeout piece and force it to wait for the jobs to be completed. So this can happen. Now,
Mike is demonstrating how flexible the await component can be. This adaptability is crucial when building robust AI agents.
One last thing on here. This is a very good way when you have, like I said, especially long-running branches of work that have to be done, but you still need those work items to complete. An important note here is the maximum number of seconds you can look at is 10,800, which is essentially 3 hours.
This 3-hour limit is an important constraint to keep in mind.
Essentially the two ways and items that you want to make sure you use async and await for. One is to quickly return results for something like a webhook, where the timeout on your endpoint, where the time to return needs to be very fast. The other is where you want to synchronize and manage long-running chunks of your workflow.
These two use cases Mike mentions are fundamental to efficient AI agent design. Let's see how he applies them in a real scenario.
And there's a few things, I went back to my notes really quickly, a few other things that I want to show you about async await, as well as loops that are common issues that happen that we want to make sure and avoid. So I'm going to one more quick setup here. Hey Siri, stop. Okay, let's go ahead and jump right in. So with the async await, there's a couple of problems that you can run into. And I think if I explain them to you here now, even though these particular examples are not the best examples, I think they can help you to avoid this problem in the future, or at least understand what's going on when you see them. So one of the common things that people do is they may have, like, okay, we've got the list of employees, but we also have for this employee, we have just one company name, and we need to add that company name when we do that. So let's, okay, so we're going to go ahead and add employee or just company here, right? And then we'll just take company and drag it into there. And it's going to say, whoa. This connection from the synchronous component to the asynchronous component, that won't work. You can't do that. And that's because this asynchronous component needs to have everything that it needs from inside that block, and everything that goes into that block needs to be fed into the variables that are in the async piece of things. So, for example, in this case, what you would need to do with the async, you would need to add a value like, for example, company. And then that can work. But there's another problem here. You can do that. However, there are some conditions, in particular some race conditions, that can occur where, let's say, your for each loop can finish before this completes, and it actually thinks that there's a problem, and you end up with what essentially amounts to an error. So the other side of this that I want to be clear about is, even though you can do this, you should not do this. This is a bad idea. What you should do instead is take everything in and inject the company as part of the employee. And you may have seen that on Tuesday when we looked at things, where I had a code block that actually added to the array that is the employee data array. In this case, here it is. And you would actually add a code block, and in that code block, you would add in both the array that you're bringing in as well as the value that you're pulling in here. You combine them so that the output can be used as one piece. That avoids that problem. So you definitely don't want to do this. The good news is that if you try to do this from an async await, you're going to get this error. The bad news is if you try and avoid it here, especially if you have multiple for each loops, you can run into all kinds of race conditions, and it is not the right way to approach things. Okay, so just a common error that we want to make sure everybody avoids, both in working with async await blocks as well as working from within for each block. So just to give you another example of what I'm talking about here. So here might be a situation where before we actually have the async await implemented, we might actually be doing this, where we have the results from each loop coming together in one Echo LLM prompt, where we will then take that and just drag and replace the input there by job 1 and job 2. This looks like it might function in the same way that an await does, but it doesn't. So you can, again, and this is one of the reasons to add these to async blocks, you can end up with another race condition that can occur, and you end up with problems. So best to implement the async piece once you have these loops working independently. Okay, so just a couple of things there about how to best work with async await and for each loops.
As we've seen in this demonstration, Async and Await are powerful tools for managing complex processes in SmythOS. They allow us to handle both quick responses and long-running tasks efficiently, which, again, is very crucial when you want to build robust and responsive AI agents. In our next video, we will be looking into agent security and authentication, which is another critical aspect of AI agent development. Mike will show us how to implement API bearer keys, which is essential for deploying AI agents in real-world scenarios. Thanks for joining us in this SmythOS Masterclass. Until next time, keep innovating.